there, this is Alex, aka Significant Brother, with a songwriting and production breakdown of my song, Less Me, More You. Indie sleaze, hashtag indie sleaze, is a phrase that's been thrown around the last couple of years to describe a certain era of music, culture, fashion that existed in the 2000s all the way up to the early 2010s. The phrase indie sleaze is a relatively new term used to describe bands like LCD Sound System, The Strokes, Yeah Yeah Yeahs, MIA, MGMT, bands of a specific era who are still performing today that kind of embraced a dance punk, electronic aesthetic in their music. I think it's very cool, very inspiring that a lot of new bands and younger artists are rediscovering the indie sleaze bands of that era, much in the same way that when I was listening to The Strokes, LCD Sound System, Block Party, I was going back and rediscovering their influences, bands like The Talking Heads, INXS, The Fix, and so on. Sure, nostalgia is kind of a tricky thing. Everything's cyclical. The snake always eats its tail, but it's kind of cool to see bands going back and rediscovering such a cool era of music as the early 2000s. I say all that about indie sleaze because with my song Less Me, More You, I was deliberately trying to capture that angsty, raw, dance punk vibe of the era because that's the kind of music that always inspired me growing up and it's the kind of music I still love to play. So sue me. I thought it'd be cool to pop open the hood of this Pro Tools session for Less Me, More You and show you what we've got going on. For being such a relatively raw and straightforward song, there's a lot of tracks going on and I thought I would start with the drums to show you how the song was built. Now, you'll notice that there are a ton of edits to the drums. It's been gridded and beat corrected to hell. This is not meant to be a slight on the drummer who played on this song, my brother Austin, who is one of the best drummers I know. This song was very much constructed backwards. This was recorded and built around a drum loop that has been lost to time. I have no idea where the original drum loop demo is, but I tracked all of the instruments around that to that drum loop. And then when I got to a certain point, I realized, oh, this would sound a lot better with live drums, but everything else sounded so cool. All the guitars, the bass, a lot of the vocals were already done. I had my brother Austin play along to all of the tracks that I knew I was going to keep, and then I had to kind of construct his drums and build them around the instruments that were already recorded. I also didn't have the structure completely intact. I realized if I just gridded Austin's drums perfectly on time, it would be a lot easier to copy and paste different sections and move them around as I constructed the song in post. That's not ideally how I would prefer to work. I kind of call that the Marvel method, where you just go into the studio, throw a bunch of shit at the wall, see what sticks, and then you fix it all in post. In a perfect world, you would go into the studio knowing exactly what the song is going to be, how it's going to be structured, but until I had live drums on the song, I wasn't entirely sure which sections were really going to pop and needed to be emphasized, so it made sense to put them on a grid so that I could easily move them around. The drums themselves are mostly organic to try and capture that early 2000 sound, which had a lot of live drums, organic instrumentation, very little samples as I went back and kind of pulled some references. In this case, I'm not opposed to samples, and I do have a kick sample providing a little bit of punch and clarity. And I've got a snare sample blended into the real snares, which has no subtlety, but is really punching through. One thing of note in the drum tracks is the crotch mic, which is an SM7B that was set down kind of in between the bottom of the snare head and the beater head of the kick drum, down by Austin's crotch, and with a little bit of an RC20 effect, providing some distortion and a heavy gate. It's providing a very spitty, percussive element that it's blended into the actual drums that gives the drums just a bunch of attitude, and it feels really cool. Another distinctive feature of that 2000s indie sleaze sound was the incorporation of drum loops and electronic and synthetic percussion blended with organic instrumentation. Obviously, drum loops existed long before the 2000s and exist more so than ever in music today, but I was always really inspired by how indie bands blended the fake and the real to create such a cool percussive element in all of their songs. Speaking of percussion, I went against every natural instinct to play a ripping guitar solo in the bridge and instead just feature a cowbell as the solo instrument, which seemed to be more appropriate for the vibe of the song and in capturing that spirit of the mid-2000s indie rock vibe. It's no secret that what listeners and fans hear at home when they're listening to music is probably very different from what the artist themselves is hearing when they're writing, recording, and mixing the songs. Best case scenario, an artist is in a nice studio listening back on an amazing sound system while they're mixing the songs. Most likely scenario is they're in a home studio like myself and everybody else I know, listening on hopefully at least decent headphones and maybe nice monitors. What that means is that the artist has no control over how the listener is experiencing their music. It's always recommended that artists and musicians listen back to their song mixes on multiple listening devices prior to the final release. In this case, I thought I had the song dialed in perfectly. The mix was crushing. I had the bass sitting right where I wanted it to be. On a whim, I decided to listen through my laptop speakers and realized there was no bass coming through the song at all. Went back to the drawing board and basically had to re-EQ how my bass guitar sounded so that it would cut through on laptop speakers. It sounds silly, but a lot of people listen on laptop speakers, so it's something to be aware of. The bass clean by itself is recorded directly into my Apollo using the Ampeg plugin, followed by a distressor for compression. I followed that up with the Universal Audio Tube preamp, boosting the level quite a bit to get some gain and get it to break up just a hair. I boosted both the lows and the highs a little bit to give it some attitude. Followed that with an SSL, adding a little more top end, quite a bit of compression. Followed that with the classic Decapitator to give it some overdrive on the punish mode. And then one of my favorite sounds is a Decapitator followed by the Soundtoys little micro shift to give it a bit of a chorusing effect. I'm doubling the bass with a bass synth to provide a little more bottom end, a higher, more clanking bass to provide a little more definition on the notes to cut through. I've got kind of a counter melody with an affected funky bass going, and then some sub stabs to really emphasize the hits on the ones so that all the basses sound together. Doing a lot of the work providing melodies and kind of carrying the song. In the higher frequency range, we have various synths providing a little bit of ambience, some movement, some top-end shimmer to kind of counterbalance all of the stuff going on with the low-end bass frequencies. The guitars in the song are very spacious, very minimal. They're doing angular, broken chords, guitar stabs. I wanted the focus of the song to be on the vocals, the bass, drums and percussion. So the guitars, if they were going to be in there, they needed to serve a purpose. They needed to be doing something cool or providing a little bit of vibe, but not distracting from the movement and the beat of the song. The guitar hook is a blend of two guitars playing the same riff but affected very differently. The first one is clean by itself. One of my favorite sounds throughout the Significant Brother project is taking an octave effect, or in this case a little Ultra Boy, throwing it on a relatively clean sound, pulling down the formant so that the plugins have trouble tracking what the exact notes are supposed to be, and it creates a warbled, mangled effect. I've blended that with another clean guitar by itself. Sounds like this. Got an SSL channel, little EQ, little micro shift, chorusing effect, and a Decapitator providing a little bit of grit. Paired together, those are the guitar hooks throughout the song. Here's the vocals soloed. For being such a relatively straightforward raw rock song, there are a lot of vocal tracks. That's kind of a result of me experimenting with different vocal delivery techniques, different effects, and a lot of doubling myself, especially in the choruses, each with their own little effect to provide some ear candy. Some of these could have been consolidated, bounced down to stereo stems to decrease the workload. I'll be honest, this one just got a little bit away from me. And that's all right. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes that happens. I'm always looking for ways to insert space into songs, to build tension, build dynamics, provide the listener with a break. Right here. Pull out a couple instruments, barely perceptible, but you feel it. We do something similar in the final chorus right here. Just a little bit of breath of fresh air before we come rocking back in there. Well, that's been a look at Less Me, More You by Significant Brother, out now available on the Record Machine and wherever you stream your streams. Hope you dig it. If you got any questions, comments, let me know down below, and I hope to see y'all very soon.
Less of me, a little more of you. It's over.